In a town where respect was supposed to guide every lesson, a young black girl named Maya walked into a dojo with nothing but hope in her heart. She didn't come to prove she was better. She only wanted to learn. But what awaited her wasn't discipline or honor, it was mockery, cruelty, and a challenge far greater than any opponent on the mat. This is not just about karate. It's about courage, about dignity, and about standing tall when the whole world tries to push you down. The wooden floor of the dojo gleamed under the pale afternoon light, every corner lined with discipline, history, and the quiet weight of tradition. For years, this place had been a sanctuary of strength and respect, but today, whispers traveled faster than honor. The doors creaked open, and in stepped Maya, a young black girl with her mother, Trina, by her side. Maya's eyes scanned the room with cautious curiosity, her small hands tightening around the strap of her worn backpack. She was nervous, yes, but her steps carried the determination of someone who had already fought battles far beyond her age. Trina's hand rested gently on her daughter's shoulder, a silent reminder that she wasn't alone. At first, the room fell silent, students pausing mid-stretch, mid-conversation. But silence soon broke into muffled snickers. A boy, near the back, whispered to his friend loud enough for everyone to hear, "She doesn't belong here. Look at her." Another chimed in with mock laughter. "Maybe she thinks this is a dance class." The cruelty wasn't sharp at first, but it was steady, spreading like wildfire until chuckles turned into outright mockery. Maya's cheeks burned. Yet she stood firm, her chin tilting upward, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing her shrink. Trina, standing just a step behind, felt every word like a blade, but she squeezed Maya's shoulder, a quiet strength that said, "We rise." Above this, Sensei Carter, tall and commanding, stepped forward. His eyes scanned the room, catching the smirks, the careless cruelty on young faces that mirrored the biases of their parents. He cleared his throat, silencing the whispers. "Every student deserves a chance," he said, though his voice carried a hesitation, a weight of knowing the storm that would follow. His gaze lingered on Maya, measuring her resolve. "Line up, we'll see what she can do." Maya bowed respectfully, just as she had practiced at home, but even that gesture drew sneers from a few of the older boys. Trina watched from the sidelines, her heart pounding, yet her pride swelling at her daughter's composure. The first drills began, simple stretches, basic stances, movements meant for beginners. Maya followed each instruction with quiet focus, her body flowing with a grace that betrayed the hours she had spent mimicking videos, practicing in their living room when no one was watching. Still, the other students mocked her, whispering, laughing when she stumbled slightly, their cruelty louder than their kicks. Then came sparring. It was meant to be a test, just a glimpse of ability. Sensei Carter paired Maya with Tyler, one of the dojo's stars, a boy confident in both skill and arrogance. The room buzzed with anticipation, some eager to see her fail, others curious if she would dare to stand her ground. Maya bowed, but Tyler only smirked, his stance dripping with overconfidence. "Try not to cry," he muttered. The match began. Tyler lunged first, swift and powerful, a move meant to intimidate. But Maya didn't flinch. Her eyes locked onto his movements, and in a fluid motion she sidestepped, redirecting his momentum with a precision that stunned even Carter. Gasps echoed around the room. Tyler stumbled, frustration flashing across his face. He came again, harder this time, striking with the force of someone desperate to prove superiority. Yet Maya, calm and composed, met him with sharp blocks, her counters clean, efficient, far beyond what anyone expected of a beginner. Within moments, Tyler found himself on the mat, breathless and humiliated, while Maya stood poised, her stance unwavering. The dojo froze. The same mouths that had laughed now hung open in disbelief. Whispers rippled through the room, but this time they carried a different weight. Not mockery, but shock, even fear. Trina's eyes welled with pride, her hands pressed against her, lips as if holding back a cheer. For the first time, Maya wasn't just the girl who didn't belong. She was the girl who had proved them wrong without saying a single word. Sensei Carter's expression was unreadable, a flicker of surprise masked beneath the authority of his role. He nodded slowly, acknowledging what everyone had just witnessed. "She has skill," he said firmly, his voice cutting through the room. But even as he spoke, the lines of tension deepened in his face. He knew what was coming. Outside these walls, whispers would become complaints. Complaints would become pressure. A black girl outshining their sons? The town would not take it lightly. That evening, as mother and daughter walked out of the dojo, the air carried both triumph and foreboding. Maya's steps were lighter, her spirit lifted by the victory of the day, but Trina's eyes scanned the shadows, aware of the storm brewing. In the corners of the dojo, students exchanged glances, their pride wounded, their biases sharpened into something darker. The fight had only just begun. Maya held her mother's hand tightly, her voice soft yet steady. "I can do this, Mom." And Trina, though her heart was heavy with worry, smiled down at her daughter. "Yes, baby, you already did." But as the dojo lights dimmed behind them, the first signs of opposition stirred. A town ready to push back, a community not ready to accept what they had seen. For Maya, the real battle wasn't the sparring mat. It was everything waiting outside those doors. The match should have ended as nothing more than a dojo memory, but by the next morning, it was everywhere. Someone had recorded Maya's sparring session with Tyler. The boy's collapse replaying in slow motion, her calm stance frozen like a challenge to every unspoken rule of the town. The video spread across phones, feeds, and whispers until it became impossible to ignore. For some, it was proof of raw talent, an inspiring glimpse of a girl who refused to bow to prejudice. But for many in this small town, it was an insult, a disruption to the order they clung to. By the time Maya walked into school, she could feel the weight of 100 stares, the hushed comments that slithered behind her back. Parents flooded Sensei Carter's phone with angry calls, demanding to know why he allowed outsiders into the dojo, why their sons had to face humiliation. Town officials, eager to appease the loudest voices, began subtle forms of retaliation. Utility bills for Trina's modest home arrived doubled, with vague threats of disconnection, their mailbox filled with anonymous notes. "Leave while you can. She doesn't belong." The whispers turned into actions, small at first, locks tampered with, their car keyed in the grocery store parking lot. And at school, the bullying sharpened into something relentless. Desks pulled away from Maya's, laughter echoing when she walked down the hallway, Tyler leading the charge with cruel jokes, his bruised pride now a campaign of vengeance. But in the midst of this storm, unexpected allies began to emerge. Ruth, an older woman who had once trained under Carter but had long retired, saw something in Maya no one else wanted to see. She approached Trina quietly after one dojo session, her voice low but steady. "That girl has spirit," she said. "Don't let them crush it. I'll help." And help she did. Ruth became a mentor, teaching Maya not just technique but the deeper rhythm of martial arts, the discipline of breathing, the quiet strength of patience, the art of standing tall when the world tries to make you small. Meanwhile, Emily, a high schooler who had long felt like an outcast herself, took to social media with a different fire. She reposted the video of Maya's sparring, not as a moment of ridicule but as a story of courage. She captioned it with words the town couldn't. "Silence. Strength has no color. Watch her." The post caught traction, reaching far beyond the small-minded borders of their community. Messages of support poured in from strangers, voices of encouragement that Maya read late at night with wide, disbelieving eyes. For every threat they received in the mail, A new message of hope appeared on her phone. But the louder her light shone, the harder the shadows pushed back. Tyler's father, a man with deep roots and deeper influence in the town, gathered the elite in whispered meetings. They spoke of preserving tradition, of protecting their children, but their words were fueled by pride and prejudice. Pressure mounted on Sensei Carter to expel Maya. Sponsors threatened to pull funding from the dojo. Even the tournament board received calls, parents demanding that she be barred from competing. Carter stood his ground, but his silence grew heavier, his eyes shadowed by the cost of defiance. Then came the intimidation. One night, as Trina and Maya returned home, they found their front door smeared with red paint, the words dripping like a wound. Go home. Another evening, Maya opened her locker at school to find shredded photos of her sparring, torn to pieces and scattered like ashes. The worst was the quiet threats. Notes slipped under their door, simple but chilling. The tournament won't save you. In the safety of their small kitchen, Trina tried to shield her daughter from the fear clawing at her heart. Yet Maya saw it. The way her mother's hands trembled when opening bills. The way her smile sometimes faltered when she thought no one was looking. And so they talked, late at night in whispers that carried the weight of survival. Maya's voice was soft, uncertain, but strong enough to cut through the silence. Mom, what if they're right? What if I don't belong? Trina reached across the table, cupping her daughter's hands in her own, her eyes glistening with tears she refused to let fall. Baby, belonging isn't given. It's claimed, and you've already claimed it. These moments, fragile and fierce, became the heartbeat of their days. Fear pressed against them from every corner, but resilience pushed back from within. And though the danger grew closer, so did their resolve. When the tournament board finally confirmed Maya's eligibility, it felt like a small victory carved from stone. Trina held the letter with trembling hands, relief flooding her chest, but neither of them smiled for long. Because in the quiet between their breaths, they knew the truth. Acceptance on paper didn't mean safety in life. The fight was far from over. The tournament was secured, but danger lingered, waiting in the shadows of what was to come. The morning of the tournament arrived, draped in an uneasy stillness, as though the town itself held its breath. For Maya, stepping into the gymnasium felt like stepping into another world, one lit with banners, echoing with cheers, and humming with possibility. Supporters who had traveled from nearby towns gathered, some holding hand-painted signs, others simply standing with arms crossed, ready to witness what the small girl with the unshakable spirit would do next. For the first time in weeks, Maya allowed herself a fragile hope, her eyes scanning the crowd for her mother's steady smile, for Ruth's nod of encouragement, for Emily with her phone raised high to capture each moment. The early matches came, swiftly, a blur of mats and movements. Maya faced competitors larger, older, and far more confident. Yet with every step she showed a precision that silenced doubters. Where others swung with brute force, she deflected with grace. Where they charged in anger, she countered with patience, turning their strength against them. The crowd shifted, the initial whispers of dismissal fading into gasps of astonishment. By her second victory, the room was alive with something dangerous, belief. Even those who had come to mock found themselves caught between pride and awe, unable to deny the girl who refused to fall. But outside the ring, shadows gathered. Tyler and his friends had not forgotten the sting of humiliation, nor the pressure from fathers who demanded retribution. As Maya prepared for the semi-finals, a hand-delivered note slipped beneath the motel door where she and her mother stayed. "Meet us, or everyone will know you're a fraud." At first, Trina told her to ignore it, to stay focused, but the pounding at their door grew louder. Threats shouted through the thin walls until silence felt like surrender. Against her better judgment, Trina followed when Maya, trembling, opened the door. The boys waited outside, their laughter sharp, carrying the poison of entitlement. They dragged her away from the bright lights of the gym to the shadowed back of the motel, a place where cheers could not reach. What began with cruel words quickly escalated, racial slurs thrown like daggers, their voices filled with venom. They shoved her to the ground, mocking her stance, spitting on her belt as though desecrating the very symbol of her effort. Each insult was a strike heavier than fists, calling her unworthy, a mistake, a stain on their world. Trina screamed, pulling at their arms but was pushed back, her voice drowned beneath their jeers. The scene twisted into a dark climax of humiliation, the sound of Maya's sobs echoing against the brick wall while their laughter filled the night. When the police arrived, called by the motel clerk who had heard the commotion, Maya thought. Relief had come. But instead of protection, she found only dismissal. The officers exchanged glances with Tyler's father, who had already arrived, his voice calm and commanding as he explained away the violence. "Just kids being kids," he said, and the police nodded, writing nothing, questioning no one. Trina's pleas were brushed aside, her words labeled as exaggerations, her tears an inconvenience. "Maybe keep her out of trouble next time," one officer muttered before leaving, as though the crime had been hers. Back inside their room, silence pressed against the walls. Maya sat on the edge of the bed, her GI torn, her face streaked with tears. The weight of every insult, every shove, every moment of hatred crushed down at once. Her voice cracked as she whispered into the stillness, "Maybe I should quit. Maybe they're right. Maybe I don't belong here." Trina knelt before her, trying to hold her together, but the words sank deep, cutting into the fragile armor her mother had helped her build. For the first time, the girl who had stood so tall seemed broken, her spirit dimmed to a flicker. But fate has a way of turning when despair feels final. Hours later, Emily burst into the motel room, her face alight with a mixture of fear and triumph. She held her phone up, trembling. "It's all on video," she said. "Someone recorded everything. They can't hide it anymore." The footage spread like fire. Tyler and his friends, their cruelty exposed in every second of shaky recording. The same internet that had once mocked now turned its rage upon the aggressors. Messages of outrage poured in, not just from strangers. This time, but from neighbors, classmates, even silent parents who could no longer look away. Community members who had stood on the sidelines stepped forward, voices loud with solidarity. "This is not who we are. She deserves better. She deserves justice." That night, as Maya scrolled through the flood of messages, her tears returned, but this time they were different. Not of defeat, but of a fragile hope being reborn. Yet the question remained, heavy and unresolved. After everything, after the assault, after the betrayal of those meant to protect her, could she step back into that ring? The tournament awaited, the spotlight brighter than ever, but so too did the scars of what had been done. And as the motel room fell into quiet once more, the narrator's voice lingered like a held breath. Will she still compete? The air inside the gym was thick with anticipation, the kind that made every breath feel like fire. Word of the motel. Assault had already spread, and the room was no longer divided between skeptics and supporters. Now, all eyes burned with judgment, waiting to see what Maya would do. She walked onto the mat with her head high, though the faint tremor in her hands betrayed the storm inside. Across from her stood Tyler, his smirk practiced, his stance broad, his very presence dripping with arrogance. But beneath the noise of the crowd, there was a current of something else, a demand for justice, for truth to finally stand taller than lies. Before the match began, Sensei Carter stepped forward. The man who once doubted her, who had stayed silent while others mocked, now held the microphone with hands that trembled slightly. His voice carried through the gym, not loud but heavy with sincerity. "I was wrong," he admitted, his eyes fixed on Maya. I let fear and pride cloud what martial arts truly mean. This dojo, this town, forgot its purpose. We were meant to build discipline, honor, and respect, not tear down those brave enough to walk this path. Today, I stand with Maya. And today, I ask all of you to remember why we train, not for trophies, but for truth. His words landed like stones dropped into a still pond, rippling through the crowd. Whispers grew into nods, nods into applause, and applause into a roar that shook the very walls. Maya closed her eyes for a moment, breathing in that wave of support. She remembered her father's quiet lessons about patience, about fighting only, when necessary and never out of anger. She remembered her mother's voice at night, steady and unbreakable, reminding her that her worth was not given by others but carved from within. She remembered Ruth's guiding hands, teaching her to move not with fear but with purpose, and Emily's fierce voice echoing through every share, every post, reminding the world of what was right. She remembered Jefferson's story, too, the old man who had once been humiliated for standing tall, and how his legacy whispered that courage was never wasted, no matter the cost. All of it filled her chest like a second heartbeat, steadying the tremor in her hands. The referee's signal cut through the noise. Tyler lunged forward first, his movements fast, sharp, reckless. He fought with rage, his strikes fueled by ego, every punch meant to break rather than to win. Maya, smaller in frame but stronger, in spirit, absorbed the momentum of his blows, deflecting, redirecting, waiting. Her patience was her weapon, her calm a shield. The crowd gasped as she sidestepped, pivoted, and countered with clean precision. Each motion was deliberate, not rushed, each strike carrying the weight of discipline rather than fury. Tyler grew more desperate, his smirk fading, his breath ragged. And then it came, the perfect opening. With flawless form, Maya executed the move. Her father had once taught her in their backyard, a strike born not of force but of balance, not of anger but of clarity. Tyler hit the mat with a thud that silenced the room, his arrogance crumbling in an instant. The referee raised Maya's hand, and the gym erupted into thunder. This was not just a victory on the mat. It was a triumph over every sneer, every insult, every injustice thrown her way. In the aftermath, the truth could no longer be buried. The video evidence, combined with Tyler's humiliating defeat, stripped away the protection his father's name once provided. Legal consequences followed, investigations opened, and the shield of privilege cracked under the weight of public outrage. The dojo, once a breeding ground for favoritism, transformed. Carter announced reforms: open classes, fair treatment, scholarships for students who had been shut out. Trina, who had fought for her daughter every step of the way, was promoted to assistant instructor, her voice now a pillar within the school. And Maya, though still so young, was offered a position as a junior instructor, a chance to pass on what she had learned not just in combat, but in life. As weeks passed, the story of Maya's fight traveled beyond the town, carried by voices, who saw in her not just a girl who won a tournament, but a symbol. In schools, younger students spoke her name with awe. Parents told her story at dinner tables, using her courage as a lesson for their children. The dojo walls, once heavy with silence, now rang with a new kind of energy, one built on fairness, on respect, on hope, and in the quiet moments when the gym was empty and the mats rolled away, Maya would stand alone, breathing in the stillness. She knew scars remained, wounds that no trophy could erase, but she also knew this truth. She had not just fought Tyler, she had fought fear, doubt, and a town's prejudice, and she had won. The narrator's voice softened as the story closed, weaving the threads into one final truth. From humiliation to honor, from despair to triumph, Maya's journey became more than a fight. It became a light, a reminder that even in the darkest corners courage can rise. that justice, though slow, can still prevail, and that the strength of one child can ignite the change of generations. Hope, justice, courage, her legacy etched forever in the hearts of those who dared to believe.